The massive, frozen iron gate of the wall lifts with a heavy mechanical grind, allowing 3 lone rangers of the Night's Watch to ride out into the endless, snow-covered wilderness of the true north. They push deep into the dense, silent forest, navigating the freezing temperatures until the group inadvertently splits apart. 2 of the soldiers keep a cautious path forward while the third tracker wanders off entirely alone into the thick trees. Moving deeper into the bleak wilderness, the lone soldier suddenly spots a thin trail of smoke rising in the distance. Drawn by curiosity and a growing sense of unease, he follows the source, only to stumble into a clearing that holds a scene of pure, unadulterated horror. The entire area is filled with countless brutally mutilated bodies scattered carelessly across the crimson snow. Terrified by the sheer scale of the slaughter, the soldier turns to flee for his life, but a sudden instinct forces him to look back one last time. There, standing completely silent and motionless behind him, is the reanimated corpse of a young wildling girl, her dead eyes locked onto his position. But then, the panicked tracker quickly scrambles onto his horse, riding through the brutal cold until he finally reunites with his 2 companions. Gasping for breath and visibly trembling, he desperately warns them that he has just witnessed something completely alien to the known world. One of the soldiers asks how close he managed to get, to which the tracker breathlessly replies that he got as close as he possibly could. Recognizing the pure dread in his eyes, the third soldier makes a firm declaration that they need to turn back immediately. However, a disagreement erupts in the snow. One of the soldiers argues that their mission was strictly to locate the wildling raiders, and believing that the frozen dead are simply the missing wildlings, he insists that their job is done and they should return home. The other soldier counters with a dangerous question, asking what they will say when their commanders demand to know exactly how these people died. To settle the debate, the 3 men return to the clearing together to inspect the carnage. The terrified tracker frantically warns them that whatever caused this horror is incredibly dangerous and doesn't even spare children. One of the soldiers responds with a sarcastic smirk, noting that at least they aren't children, before coldly telling the frightened tracker that if he wants to desert his post and run south, he is welcome to try, but the law never spares a deserter anyway. Suddenly the cold shifts. Returning to the clearing, the rangers are stunned to find that all the mutilated bodies have mysteriously vanished into the wind. As the terrified tracker backs away toward the horses, the other 2 soldiers remain in the empty snow, whispering to one another. Out of the pitch-black shadows, a towering ancient creature of ice materializes and lunges forward, slaughtering the first soldier instantly. Hearing the horrific screams, the remaining 2 men completely panic. The monster effortlessly cuts down the second veteran, leaving only the tracker who had gone back to the horses to flee the woods, narrowly escaping with his life. The lone surviving soldier runs blindly through the freezing wilderness, but before he can make it to safety, he is captured by a patrol of fellow northern soldiers. Meanwhile, the scene transitions from the terrifying cold of the north to the gritty, stone courtyard of Winterfell, where young Bran Stark is practicing his archery skills. He is strictly told to focus and aim properly because both his mother and his father are watching his performance from the high balcony above. Bran takes a slow, careful aim and releases his arrow, only to miss the target completely. Watching from the balcony, his father, Ned Stark, smiles warmly at the boy's frustration, turning to encourage him by asking who else had a perfect aim at just 10 years old, telling Bran to keep practicing. Just as Bran prepares to take his final shot, his sister Arya mischievously sneaks up behind him, fires an arrow of her own, and hits the exact center of the bullseye. Her playful interruption sparks a brief, chaotic sibling argument, bringing a rare moment of family joy to an end. Moments later, the peaceful atmosphere is shattered when an urgent message arrives informing Ned Stark that his guards have captured a terrified deserter from the Night's Watch. Ned immediately turns to his men and commands them to prepare a horse for the journey. His wife, Catelyn, looking on with concern, asks if this grim execution is truly necessary, but Ned firmly replies that the law is the law, and it remains the same for everyone in the realm. Ned then looks down and declares that Bran will be joining them to witness the execution. His mother immediately objects, arguing that the boy is still far too young to witness death, but Ned shuts down the protest, stating that the boy has to grow up someday. The captured deserter is led out to the heavy wooden execution block in chains. Instead of begging for his life, the broken man repeatedly screams to the surrounding crowd that he saw the White Walkers, pleading directly with Ned Stark to believe him. He openly admits that he broke his sacred oath by fleeing his post, but he desperately insists that what he witnessed in the forest was real and that the entire world needs to know the monsters have returned. Before the heavy blade falls, he makes one final tragic request, asking that if Ned ever encounters his family, he tell them that he wasn't a coward and he wasn't afraid. Ned steps forward, draws his massive steel blade and carries out the execution by clean decapitation. Following the grim display, Ned walks over to comfort Bran, asking if the boy understands why the sentence had to be carried out. Bran looks up and notes that the people are saying the man was a lawbreaker, but he then quietly asks his father what would happen if the deserter truly did see the mythical White Walkers. Ned reassures his son, stating firmly that the White Walkers disappeared thousands of years ago and are long gone from the world. Afterward, Ned continues riding with his sons, Jon Snow and Bran. As they travel, they come across a dead stag lying mutilated on the riverbank. One of the boys suggests that a lion might have caused the massive wounds, but Ned quickly dismisses the idea, pointing out that there are no lions in these northern lands. Moving closer, they discover the secondary horror, a massive, dead female direwolf lying nearby, killed by a broken stag antler embedded deep in her throat. Whining beside the giant beast are 6 newborn direwolf pups, left entirely alone in the snow. Ned reaches down, picks up one of the helpless pups, and hands it directly to Bran. Looking at the tiny creature, Bran asks what will happen to them now that their mother is gone, and Ned solemnly replies that they cannot survive on their own and must be put down. As a soldier steps forward to execute the litter, Bran loudly protests, begging them to stop. Jon Snow steps into the argument, pointing out that there are exactly 5 direwolf pups for the 5 trueborn Stark children, and since the direwolf is the ancient sigil of House Stark, they were fated to find them. Ned relents, looking directly at Bran to deliver a stern warning. If he keeps the pup, he must raise it, feed it, and care for it entirely on his own, and if it dies, Bran will be the one to dig its grave. Gathering the animals, the brothers begin their journey back to the castle. Bran turns to Jon Snow, insisting that he should take a puppy as well, but Jon quietly declines, stating that because he is a bastard and not a true Stark, he has no right to one. But just as they continue riding, Jon notices a final hidden puppy concealed behind the others. Unlike the rest of the litter, this specific pup possesses pure white fur and red eyes. Jon picks up the albino outcast as his brothers laugh, teasingly telling him that it looks like he was meant to have a wolf after all. Jon smiles, cradling the white pup close as they ride toward the castle gates. Meanwhile, back within the stone walls of Winterfell, Catelyn Stark receives an exceptionally urgent message from the south and immediately rushes to find her husband. She breaks the devastating news that Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King and the man who raised Ned like a father, has suddenly died after suffering from a brutal fever. Ned, visibly shaken, anxiously inquires about the safety of Jon Arryn's wife and young son, and Catelyn reassures him that her sister and nephew are completely safe. But then Catelyn delivers a secondary piece of massive news. King Robert Baratheon is currently traveling north to Winterfell, accompanied by the Queen, the young prince and the entire royal entourage. Ned looks grim, realizing that if the king is traveling thousands of miles to the cold north, he can only have one true motive, to arrange a royal marriage with their eldest daughter, Sansa. Seeing the worry on his face, Catelyn quietly reminds him that he still has the power to refuse the king's demands. Preparations for the royal arrival begin instantly across the entire castle. The entire fortress becomes a bustling hive of activity as servants decorate the royal chambers, light hundreds of candles, and arrange every precise detail to welcome the ruler of the 7 kingdoms. Suddenly, the massive royal procession approaches the gates of Winterfell. Watching from a great distance, young Bran climbs to the very peak of a crumbling stone tower to witness the incoming knights. As he climbs back down to the ground, his mother catches him red-handed, reminding him how many times she has forbidden him from scaling the dangerous walls. Bran quickly promises that he will never climb the towers again, but Catelyn smiles softly, telling him that whenever he tells a lie, he always looks straight down at his feet. The royal court finally arrives in a spectacular display of southern wealth. As the travelers enter the courtyard, the handsome young Prince Joffrey looks directly toward Sansa Stark, and Sansa blushes, looking back at him with absolute infatuation, making it clear to everyone watching that their arranged marriage is already a foregone conclusion. Ned Stark and his entire household stand waiting in the courtyard, and the moment the king dismounts, every single northern soul kneels in a massive display of respect and loyalty. King Robert walks forward, helps Ned to his feet, and cracks a joke about how fat his old friend has gotten over the years. He warmly embraces Ned, politely greets Catelyn, and then moves down the line to meet each of the Stark children individually. Behind him, Queen Cersei Lannister steps out of her golden carriage, greeting the Stark family with a cold, proud and incredibly arrogant demeanor that signals her absolute disdain for the dirty north. Later that evening, seeking true privacy away from the crowded halls, King Robert takes Ned down to the dark crypts and speaks to him with absolute honesty, stating bluntly, "I need you." He asks Ned to step into the vacant role of the Hand of the King, to become his most trusted advisor and command the realm. Ned hesitates, replying that he is simply not the right man for the treacherous politics of the South. But Robert refuses to take no for an answer, explaining that he wants Ned to manage the difficult burden of ruling the kingdom while he spends his days enjoying life. Robert reminds him that Ned helped him win the Iron Throne during the rebellion, and now he needs his most loyal friend to help him keep the empire together. Robert continues his plea, looking at the stone statue of Ned's departed sister, Lyanna, stating that if she had lived, the two of them would have ruled the continent together as king and queen. But then he notes that it is not too late to bind their houses, proposing that since Ned has a beautiful daughter and he has a grown prince, they should permanently unite their families through a royal marriage. Just when things settle down at the castle, the perspective shifts away from the royal chambers to a local winter town brothel, where Tyrion Lannister is engaged in an intimate encounter with a woman. Drinking heavily, Tyrion remarks with a smirk that the women of the north are every bit as wild and beautiful as the rumors claimed. As Tyrion leads the woman back toward the bed, she casually asks if he has heard that the king has officially arrived in Winterfell, adding that the queen's famous brother has accompanied the court as well. The woman remarks that she has heard the queen is the most beautiful woman in the world, but she then looks at Tyrion and asks if he knows about the queen's other brother. Tyrion smiles knowingly, replying that if one Lannister brother is widely celebrated for his physical looks, then the other brother is famous across the world for his sharp intelligence. The woman laughs, noting that the small folk call him the Little Devil. Tyrion's smile fades slightly as he admits that he absolutely hates that specific nickname. The woman continues to tease him, mentioning that the rumors claim the Little Devil is completely useless in bed, unable to satisfy any woman, and is nothing more than a reckless drunk who has crossed every boundary of decent behavior. Tyrion simply smiles at her bold words, calling her quite talkative, but she replies that they have been waiting for his arrival for a very long time. Glancing down, she notices that despite the insulting rumors, Tyrion is fully aroused, smiling teasingly as she notes that he looks perfectly ready to prove the gossip wrong. Suddenly, the bedroom door is thrown open without a knock, and Jaime Lannister strolls into the chamber. Annoyed by the sudden intrusion, Tyrion asks his brother if he needs a formal lesson on what a closed door is supposed to mean. Jaime simply grins, replying that everyone is waiting and they must attend the royal feast immediately. Tyrion waves him off, joking that his own personal celebration started a little earlier than everyone else's. Jaime smiles, admitting he figured as much, and reveals he has already made secondary arrangements for his brother as 3 more beautiful women walk into the room and gather around Tyrion. At the same time, the story jumps entirely across the narrow sea to the sun-drenched continent of Essos, where the exiled Viserys Targaryen tracks down his younger sister, Daenerys. Walking into her chambers, he calls her their future bride, handing her an expensive, beautiful silk robe that was sent as a gift from their wealthy benefactor, Magister Illyrio. Viserys walks over to Daenerys, telling her not to look so terrified. He cruelly removes her clothing to inspect her bare body, remarking with a cold smile that she is no longer a little girl and has officially grown into a beautiful woman. He gently runs his hand over her skin, telling her that she must make a flawless impression today, asking if she truly wants them to return home to reclaim their stolen throne and kingdom. Later that afternoon, Daenerys, Viserys and Illyrio stand on a high balcony overlooking a massive valley, waiting for the arrival of the formidable Dothraki horse lords. Soon, a thunderous sound of hooves echoes through the hills as Khal Drogo and his massive army of warriors ride into the courtyard. Illyrio steps forward to formally introduce the royal siblings to the warlord, presenting them as Princess Daenerys and Prince Viserys of House Targaryen. Viserys quietly leans over to Daenerys, directing her attention to Khal Drogo's exceptionally long hair. He explains that among the Dothraki culture, a warrior is only permitted to cut his hair after losing a battle, meaning Drogo's massive, uncut braid proves he has never been defeated in combat. He warns her that if any Dothraki leader loses a fight, his hair is publicly chopped off so the entire world can witness his eternal shame. Viserys adds with an eager smile that this man has never lost a single battle in his entire life, and she is about to become his bride. Daenerys takes a hesitant step forward, and Khal Drogo silently studies her trembling frame for a long, intense moment before turning his horse around and riding away without uttering a single word. Viserys immediately grows incredibly nervous, asking Illyrio if the warlord disliked his sister, but Illyrio quickly reassures him that the Khal was deeply impressed by her beauty. Illyrio encourages the anxious prince, telling him to come along and celebrate, promising that with the unstoppable support of the Dothraki horde, Viserys will easily cross the sea and reclaim his father's throne, as there are still thousands of loyalists in Westeros secretly waiting for the return of their true king. But then Viserys turns back to Daenerys to explain the cold reality of the situation, stating that he has made an absolute deal with the warlord. He will give his sister away in marriage and in exchange Drogo will grant him a massive army to conquer the 7 kingdoms. Daenerys, weeping quietly, tells her brother that she simply doesn't want to marry a savage stranger. Furious at her defiance, Viserys grabs her, hissing that they have a sacred duty to take back their kingdom and reclaim the Iron Throne. He warns her that if she dares to refuse the arrangement, he would gladly hand her over to Drogo's entire Khalasar, all 40,000 warriors and their horses, if that is what it took to win back his crown. Inside the magnificent hall of the castle, the royal feast and grand celebration have officially begun, with the sounds of music and laughter echoing through the walls. But outside, in the silence of the freezing, dark night, Jon Snow stands completely isolated and alone, separated from his family. At that moment, Tyrion Lannister emerges from the shadows and slowly walks over toward him. Jon studies him closely and remarks, "You look like the Queen's brother, Tyrion Lannister." Tyrion looks back at him and delivers a direct, sharp blow, replying, and you look like a bastard to me, Ned Stark's illegitimate child. Hearing this, Jon's face instantly falls and the words cut him deeply. Seeing how much it hurts, Tyrion coldly adds, "If the truth offends you, forgive me, but it is a fact that you are a bastard." Tyrion then takes a step closer to Jon Snow, offering him a powerful piece of advice. "Let me give you some counsel," he says. "Never forget what you are, because the world will surely never forget. Wear that name tightly on your chest like your armor, like a shield, and it will never be used to hurt or wound you again." Stung by these words, Jon turns to Tyrion in anger and demands, "What do you know about what it is like to be a bastard and feel this pain?" Tyrion lets out a bitter, knowing smile, looks directly into Jon's eyes and replies, "Every dwarf is a bastard and a lowborn in his own father's eyes." The narrative shifts directly to the grand Dothraki wedding celebration. Loud, primitive music echoes across the massive desert camp as fierce warriors drink heavily, laugh, and celebrate the union. Men and women dance wildly around massive bonfires according to Dothraki custom, wearing minimal clothing in an atmosphere that is deeply wild, passionate, and filled with non-stop, chaotic festivities. During the height of the celebration, two servants approach the wedding platform carrying an ornate, heavy wooden chest. They open the lid before Daenerys, revealing 3 magnificent, glistening dragon eggs resting inside. The chief advisor steps forward, explaining that these are genuine dragon eggs brought from the mysterious Shadowlands beyond As High, noting that while the centuries have turned them to solid stone, they remain incredibly beautiful. He prays they serve as a worthy gift for the new Khaleesi, and Daenerys runs her hands over the textured shells, gratefully thanking him for the priceless treasure. After the festivities conclude, Khal Drogo stands up from his throne and silently walks away from the fire. Daenerys follows him into the darkness as the silent crowd watches them depart. Drogo gently lifts his new bride onto a magnificent silver horse, and just before she rides off into the night, Viserys leans in close, quietly ordering her to make sure she keeps the warlord happy at all costs. Later that evening, the scene shifts to a completely quiet, isolated beach by the sea where Khal Drogo and Daenerys find themselves entirely alone in their tent. Daenerys is absolutely paralyzed with fear, weeping and repeatedly whispering the word no as the large warlord approaches her. But Drogo remains completely calm, wiping away her tears and attempting to reassure her through surprisingly gentle gestures as they begin their complicated marriage. Back within the gates of Winterfell the next morning, Ned Stark is fully mounted on his horse, packed and ready to leave his home for the treacherous capital of King's Landing. King Robert rides up beside him, admitting that he knows he has put a massive amount of pressure on his old friend, but states that Ned is the only man left in the entire world that he can truly trust, calling him the last loyal friend he has. Ned looks across the courtyard to see young Bran smiling proudly up at his father. Ned nods, turns his horse and rides out of the castle gates alongside the royal entourage. Just when the adults have finally departed on their journey, Bran sneaks away from the guards and secretly climbs the high stone tower once again, completely disregarding his mother's strict permission. As his hands grip the top ledge and he reaches the window of the old keep, he suddenly hears strange, intimate gasping sounds echoing from inside the room. Driven by innocent curiosity, the boy peeks through the open window and is shocked to discover Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei locked in a secret, treasonous embrace. Cersei suddenly looks up, spots the boy's face in the window frame, and cries out in pure horror, saying that he saw them. Jaime rushes over with lightning speed, grabs the terrified boy by his collar, and pulls him into the frame. He looks back at his sister, turns his cold, handsome gaze toward the young boy and quietly mutters, "The things we do for love." With a violent shove, Jaime launches Bran backward into the empty air, sending him plummeting from the immense height as the screen violently cuts to black, bringing the dramatic premiere to an end.